Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Sydney Kraviak, and I am the Program and Outreach Coordinator at Peters Township Public Library. Before I introduce our speaker this evening, we have Kay from our Peters Township Public Library Foundation who would like to say a few words.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Sydney said, my name is Kay McAvoy, and I'm pleased to be here as a member of the Peters Township Library Foundation Board. The foundation is a group of Peters Township residents dedicated to supporting the Peters Township Public Library financially and through volunteer support as we open books, doors, and minds in our community. There are many ways we support our library, such as funding the James D. and William C. McMurray Local History Room Archivist and sponsoring speakers and events such as the recent Novel November with Taylor Jenkins Reid. The foundation raises funds from our annual donor drive mailer, private donations, and through the Washington County Charitable Foundation Day of Giving. We also raised funds from used book sales. Please check out the freestanding cases in the rotunda and in the youth section, and watch out for our pop-up book sale events. Your donations will continue to help us augment the library budget to provide programs and materials for you and our community. Thank you so much for your support, and feel free to contact the foundation to find out how to get involved with supporting our amazing library. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. And thank you all for joining us this evening. Our presenter this evening is Leslie. Leslie is a registered dietitian, a board certified specialist in sports dietetics. Okay, thank you. The owner of Active Eating Advice, Be Fit, Fed, Fearless, and co-founder of Performance 365. Her clients include the National Dairy Council, California Prune Board, Douglas Labs, Gatorade, Kellogg's, Potatoes USA, the National Peanut Board, Produce for Better Health, Sodexo, the Mushroom Council, and the Wonderfuls brand. She is currently the sports nutrition consultant for the 2020 Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater. Her company, Performance 365, provided the sports nutrition services for the inaugural season of the XFL and also the new FCF League. Thank you for joining us tonight, Leslie.
Well, thank you so much, Sydney. And hi, everybody. It is so nice to be with you. I am going to share my screen. And I noticed with our poll questions that, we didn't quite get it right there. So, I'm just going to address those first, and we're going to talk about these things tonight because this is a really big deal. Is a lot of these things that are so pervasive out there. And my goal is always to have people be as inclusive as possible with what they eat, right? It's more about what you do than what you don't. So the question that I asked about inflammation, and these weren't trick questions, but this is what is out there right now, oftentimes what I would say by the fear mongers or the sinfluencers, those who really don't know, but are putting the information out there anyways. The good news is that dairy does not cause inflammation. Gluten does not cause inflammation unless somebody has celiac disease, and then they shouldn't be eating it anyways. And red meat doesn't either. But we will talk about, what truly are the components of an anti-inflammatory diet. The second one was a question about for weight loss, what is the best strategy? And those of you who ever tried to manage weight before, most of the time we don't like to be told what not to do, right? That we don't like that. And instead we think about what to do. And the correct answer is optimize protein, because when somebody is trying to lose weight, what really you're trying to do is to decrease body fat, not lose muscle, not lose water. And so if somebody just cuts their calories, they might see a lower weight on the scale, but some of what they lose is muscle as well as fat. So optimized protein was the correct answer there. And then, the third is really what would be the best strategy in terms of eating. Some people said 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day or largest meal earlier in the day. And actually the best strategy is that you pretty evenly divide your meals over the course of the day. That really is what the body likes, which makes the body most happy. So off we go, talking about nutrition intuition in the kitchen. And so it was a kind of a prelude to that of what we're seeing out there, what I see out there, and certainly what we see more in the lay press, not from the science, but from the lay press, is a lot of misinformation. So one of them being bananas make you fat. Well, if you think about the look of a banana, it's not fat. There's no fat in a banana. It is a fruit. It has fluid. It has fiber, it has carbohydrate, vitamins, minerals, and plant nutrients. That's what's in it. So if the bananas are fattening because they have a creamy taste, they have a creamy mouthfeel. But a banana is about 80 calories. So, hardly is that making anybody fat. The second one, beef is bad, right? If you're a vegan, then you probably wouldn't want to eat it because you don't eat meat. But, does that mean that beef is bad? If beef is the only thing on your plate, I would say that then you're probably missing out on a lot of other things. But if beef is a component of the plate in a stir fry, on a salad, as part of a kebab, and there are so many lean cuts of meat out there right now that really it is quite fine. Plus, red meat also is higher in zinc, is higher in iron than other types of animal proteins. Third, don't eat egg yolks. The good news is that the very recent recommendation from the American Heart Association, the National Cholesterol Education Program, have really taken dietary cholesterol off the hook, even for people who do have elevated blood cholesterol level. The egg yolk is where is concentrated choline, which is a vitamin that's critically important for the health of our brain. The egg yolk contains lutein and zeaxanthin, which are actually nutrients that help the health of the eye. The egg yolk also is one of the few food sources of vitamin D. And the egg yolk has half the protein in the egg. Half is in the white and half is in the yolk. So no yolk here. It's really, or no joke, it really is important. And plus it adds the flavor. Just an egg white omelet, it's kind of bland to do that. Okay. So fourth on this list is only eat organic. This is a choice. It is not an indicator of higher nutrition. It's a choice that one can make. You're going to pay more to buy organic. It takes a hell of a lot more labor on organic farms to bring those foods to market. But there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of myth about organic that no pesticides are used. That is simply not true. They are sometimes different pesticides than what are used in conventionally grown crops, and sometimes they're actually the same. This next one is really one that makes me insane. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it, which is absolutely ridiculous. Food is made of chemicals. For all of you who had water today, water is hydrogen dioxide. It's one hydrogen and two molecules of oxygen. So most of us aren't thinking, oh, I had hydrogen dioxide. Well, yes, you did. That's water, and it's a chemical. Our bodies are made of chemical. The foods we eat are made of chemicals. That's just the way that it is. And last, the cleanses are necessary. Maybe to clean your house, certainly to wash your hands. But when it comes to what it is we put in our body, not so much. Okay, so one of the things that comes out every year is this list from the Environmental Working Group, and they call it the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. Now, one of the things about this list, it really is fear mongering, is when they say that there are foods like strawberries. Oh, strawberries have pesticides. Well, let me just put it in perspective for you. You would have to eat pints and pints and pints of strawberries every day to even come close to what it is that they think might be a too high a level of pesticide. Most of us aren't eating pints and pints and pints of strawberries every single day. When you look at the things that are on that list, strawberries, spinach, kale, nectarines, apples, grapes, cherries, peaches, pears, hot peppers and bell peppers, celery and tomatoes. We love those foods. It's produce. And the reality is that 1 in 10 of us is eating enough fruits and vegetables every day. We don't need these stinking lists that tell us about things we shouldn't be doing. It is critically important to eat produce every day. You choose the ones you want to have. If you're concerned, when you bring your produce home, wash it under cold running water. It's enough. You don't have to give it a bubble bath. You don't have to give it a little powder. You don't have to put it in bleach or any of this kind of stuff. It is perfectly safe to consume. Also, another one is termed superfood. We hear it a lot. To me, that conjures up an image of a blueberry with a cape. There are no superfoods. Now, there are some foods that might have a more complete nutritional value because they provide more, but that doesn't necessarily make them super. There's not one food alone for any of us after we are infants that's going to do everything we need every day. We need fruits and vegetables. We need grains. We need protein in some way, shape, or form. We need fat. We need all those types of things. So that term superfoods is really about the sale. It's the marketing. That's what it is. There are no additional benefits. More is not better. So, if we eat the rainbow and look at these gorgeous colors, yeah, all of them, not just the yellow ones, not just the orange one, the whole spectrum is really what we're looking at. And whether they are fresh, frozen, canned, or dried, they all provide nutritional value. So there's a lot of confusion out there, a lot. And I empathize because I weed through this stuff every single day. Absolutely too much clutter. The blog clog is not to be believed, let alone the TikTok and everything else, and chaos as well, which creates a lot of contention for all of us when it comes to trying to make choices to nourish our bodies well. So one of the things that we've heard a lot through the pandemic, and it's not going away, and it will hopefully continue to be top of mind as we move into the flu season of the year, is how do we support a healthy immune system? And I've given talks on it, so I won't dwell on this other than to say that you can't boost your immunity. So a lot of times you'll see immune boosters. Nope. You can support your immune system, but you can't boost it. There's no product out there that will boost it. There's no food out there that will boost it. So how do we support a healthy, optimal immune system? We eat foods with color, which is not M&Ms or gummy bears or jelly beans. It is fruits and vegetables. We minimize alcohol because too much alcohol can actually have a deleterious effect on the immune system. We eat foods that contain probiotics, such as yogurt or kefir, which is a fermented dairy drink. Sauerkraut and pickles that are sold in the refrigerated section are also considered to be probiotics. Some people take probiotics, but if you just take probiotics and you don't eat enough carbohydrate and you don't eat fruits and vegetables, you might as well not take the probiotic. Vitamin D is important to support a healthy immune system, and also food that contains zinc. So things like grains. So people that eat a very low carb diet or go keto, well, you're not necessarily going to get a lot of zinc. There's some in nuts and seeds. There's not a ton. There's some in beans and lentils, but oh no, you shouldn't eat those if you're low carb. Yes, you should, because they're really very good for you in terms of the benefits that they convey to the diet and the fact that they do have zinc in them. This year, this time of year, and certainly every time of year, there are a lot of people that struggle with their weight. Right now, it is 40% of the United States population. Some very interesting, fascinating, and scary research coming out about how COVID may attack the fat cells of the body. But I show you this slide to show you that it's complicated. There's a lot of things that play into what happens in terms of how our body uses calories, in terms of how our body expends calories. It's our environment, it's our genes, it's our upbringing, it's our food choices, it's our appetite, it's our hunger. So it's not just eat less, move more. That's very, very simplified, and that doesn't work for everybody. And truly, one has to find what works for them, and personalizing a plan is really the very, very best choice. The other thing I will tell you about that is not only are we seeing this rise in people who are struggling with their weight, but we're also seeing all online about body shaming or body idealization. Facebook, formerly known as Facebook, now Meta, is we see things every single day, and I see it and it makes me insane of who has toned thighs and who has flat abs, and who really cares. It's more than that. We don't necessarily have to see everybody in a crop top. What else? What's happening with their brain? What are they doing for other people in the world? And so this is escalating the problem. So along with people worried about how they look, is feeling like they're holding themselves up to a standard that may not be realistic, nor may it be healthy to do. When it comes to diets, I show you this is look at all these things, this gorgeous colored slide. So we have low carb, we have ketogenic diet, we have paleo, we have low fat, intermittent fasting, Weight Watchers, and very low calorie diet. And what do they all have in common? They create a calorie deficit. Why do people lose weight? Because you're eating fewer calories. This is not rocket science. This is what happens. So, some people feel better when they might eat less carbs, but that doesn't mean none. Some people may feel better if they decrease their fat a little bit instead of having 5 avocados a day, but that doesn't mean none. And even when people cut their calories back, we don't know how much weight people will do. There's no magic formula. I can't tell you and guarantee you that if you eat 500 fewer calories a day, you'll lose a pound a week. It doesn't work that way because everybody's body is individual. And quite frankly, we look at preserving our muscle mass and decreasing body fat. Body fat loss for most people, unless they are having liposuction or doing some extremely low calorie diet, body fat loss is about 0.5 pound a week. That's really hard to see on a scale because when we lose body fat, we lose it from the inside out, meaning the visceral fat or the fat that's around our organs. That's where we lose it first, not in our pinky toes. So what are some of the concerns that are out there? We have food evangelism, where truly people think, well, my diet is better than anything, and everybody should be eating this way. No, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for everybody else. We have this idea of eating clean. Let me say it to you. Wash your hands. That's eating clean. We have the food bullying. We have feudies over foodies. Why should we have battle zones at the table? It doesn't make sense to do that. We have people who focus more on what they're not going to eat or elimination rather than what it is that they're going to include. We have food fear, and that's a terrible, terrible thing, to be afraid of the food that you eat. We should not be afraid of the food that we eat. And we also have a tremendous amount of food waste. That problem is not going away. It is the number one contributor to the landfill, what people aren't eating because we throw it away. Or we say, oh, I'm going to buy all this produce and I'll make a salad every day, and we don't. And then we have to throw it. So all of these things are critically important. So let's talk a little bit about intermittent fasting because it is quite popular. So when we talk about that, IF or intermittent fasting or TRE, which is time restricted eating, what might be some of the benefits? Primarily what I have seen with my clients that like to try this is for people who tend to overeat in the evening. So not necessarily a big dinner, but they eat dinner and then they're still eating after dinner. Is if they put an upper limit on the time that they're going to stop eating, that may be beneficial because then they are going to eliminate some of those extra calories that they normally would consume at night. And they may lose weight. But what are some of the risks of this? Well, when you're doing intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, you're only going to allow yourself to eat at certain periods of the day, which means there might be other times of the day that you might be very, very hungry, or it might cause that rebound eating or overeating. You may not necessarily sleep well if you're hungry. You may lose muscle, not just fat, but muscle as well. And you may actually underconsume nutrients. So, and that's the problem when we have busy lives and we're trying to overlay time restricted eating on top of it. Something has to give. There's only so many hours in the day. So again, not one size fits all. Some people find this is very helpful, but it is not the answer for everyone. All right, what about keto? When we talk about a keto diet, what we're really talking about is a diet that is extremely high in fat, meaning that it could be upwards of 70% of the calories coming from fat every day. It is moderate in the amount of protein that it contains. It is low in terms of the amount of carbohydrate. So how does somebody determine this? Well, the only way you really know if your body is in ketosis, or in other words, burning some of those free fatty acids, is you have to test it. You can't tell by looking at your hair or your eyeballs or your clothes. You have to test. And the majority of time, people are actually not in ketosis. So what might be one of the benefits of it? Yes, you will actually burn more fat when you exercise because fat is primarily what you're eating when you eat a keto diet. And indeed, you may lose weight. But what is the composition of that weight loss? Probably not just fat, probably losing some muscle as well. But what are some of the other things we get concerned about? For people who have done ketogenic diets, this is not just Leslie telling you this, this is based upon the science, is that the keto diet may actually cause an increase in LDL or low density lipoprotein, or what we call bad cholesterol, because a lot of the foods that are consumed on a keto diet tend to be very high in saturated fat. We also know that for people that are trying to combine a keto diet with an exercise program, that being on a keto diet may have a negative impact on strength and speed and stamina or energy during exercise. So if somebody says, I'm training for the Pittsburgh Marathon, I'm going to do keto diet, probably not such a great idea because you're going to be weaker, you're going to be slower, and you're going to fatigue earlier on during your run. And unfortunately, with some of the newer research looking at this, is that a ketogenic diet may actually have an adverse effect on bone health. And let me tell you, I am a very big believer in supporting our supporting structure. We don't want to do anything that's going to weaken our bones. As we get older, it's hale, not frail. Strong is the new sexy. That's the way that it should be. And we all want to do things that help to support our bone health. So when we think about what's out there, and some of the things you may have heard, or if you've ever used an app on your phone, oftentimes the way that that app tracks what you eat or gives you the feedback is based upon what we call the macronutrients. So short here is macro. So macronutrients are the carbohydrate we eat, protein, and fat. But we don't just eat those things, right? And actually, we don't really eat nutrients, we eat food. But food also contains the micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. Food contains hydro or hydration. There's fluid in the food that we eat. Fruits and vegetables are all 90 to 99% water. Foods contain phytonutrients, and that is in plant-containing foods. So grains, nuts, seeds, beans, fruits, and vegetables. And food also contains microbes. We might think, I don't necessarily know that I want to eat bacteria, but you know what? If you're eating yogurt and you're drinking kefir, you're consuming live active cultures. And those cultures are really very, very good for supporting the health of your microbiome, which resides in your intestine. So this is just to show you it's very busy, but I'm just showing you why I am not a fan of people just eliminating certain groups of food. Well, I won't eat fruit, or well, I won't eat grains. Well, that leaves you with vegetables and protein. So if somebody said no fruit, then those things that are in the upper left-hand corner, the ellagic acid, which we find in apples and berries, coffee fiber, that's what's in coffee when we drink it. The polyphenols that are found in berries, those are really, really important for our overall health, and they have a role to play in decreasing inflammation as well. If somebody said, well, I'm not going to eat grains, then you're not eating what we call the saccharides. And some of those saccharides, the polysaccharides, the oligosaccharides that are found in corn and oats and barley and bread, when they get into the intestine, they break down into short chain fatty acids that actually help to feed the good bacteria in the gut. So if you cut those things out right away, the body's like, the body's at a disadvantage. If somebody says, oh, no, I'm not going to consume dairy because I heard that increases inflammation. Well, there are oligosaccharides as a form of carbohydrate in milk. There are fermentation products, especially in cheese and in yogurt. And there are also probiotics. So we're eliminating a lot of good stuff. So that kind of leaves us here with the vegetables. So vegetables contain inulin, not insulin. It's inulin, which is a prebiotic. If you eat soy, there are isoflavones in soy. There are the the glucosinolates that are found in cabbage family vegetables and all these other things, but that alone doesn't provide the full spectrum of what we need. It really takes an entire village to give our microbiome a healthy home. And then on the bottom with the protein, there's lots of things that are in protein foods. Amino acids, which are the breakdown components of protein. Phosphatidylcholine, which is found in egg yolks. The heterocyclic amines that are found in meats. And even the nitrosamines, people say, oh, no, you shouldn't be eating that. It's a question of how much and how often, especially when it comes to some of the cured meats like bacon and sausage and those types of thing. And also in meat, especially certain fish, fatty fish, the omega-3 fatty acids. So if we get too restrictive with what we eat, we're really missing out on some opportunities to nourish our bodies well. So we've got a lot of this fear going on right now and a lot of unnecessary elimination. And I'm not talking about what happens when you go to the bathroom. I'm talking about what happens with what people do not put on their plate. So this scapegoating of food. This is the reason that I have problems. The question that I posed to you all about inflammation and what causes inflammation. And dairy does not, and gluten does not. and red meat does not, and nor do nightshade family vegetables. Now, Tom Brady may choose not to eat them. That's his prerogative. But even with the National Arthritis Foundation says there is no science to support the elimination of eggplant, of peppers, of tomatoes. It doesn't help arthritis to take those away. And actually, all of those foods contain substances that act as anti-inflammatory agents, not pro-inflammatory agents. A lot of people say you should not eat the lectins. Dr. Scott Gundy, who's written a lot of books, really is all up in arms about this. No, you shouldn't eat beans because your body doesn't digest them. And lectins are what are considered to be the anti-nutrients. So if you eat them, they're duking it out with everything else in your gut. Imagine that. There's this little war going on the inside. Okay, here's the issue. Beans, so all those beans in the bottom of that picture, those gorgeous colors, if we ate them raw, they are a source of lectins. Human beings cannot digest raw beans. You can't even bite into them. You break a tooth. When you cook them, you render those lectins neutral. I mean, you've just neutralized them, so to speak, so they don't cause any issues at all. They are absolutely fine to eat. The majority of the world eats beans each and every day. They are high in fiber. They are high in protein. They are high in the plant nutrients. They have vitamins and minerals in them. They have a role to play in terms of lowering cholesterol. They really are an absolutely excellent food, whether we have them dry, whether we buy them canned, even sometimes frozen now, they are available that way, and roasted, like the roasted chickpeas and roasted fava and some of the other ones that we see on the shelves in the grocery store. So to mention this issue of the inflammation, or basically what I would say is inflammation, disinformation, just look at this list and realize again, as I just said, nightshade foods do not cause inflammation. Lectins or beans do not cause inflammation. Gluten does not cause inflammation unless somebody has celiac disease, and dairy does not cause inflammation. So if you're eliminating things for that reason alone, then you probably are unnecessarily taking some things off your plate. All right, we hear the word processed. Now, the fact of the matter is that when you chop a food, you're processing it. When you bake it, you process it. When you freeze it, you process it. So every step in cooking is a process. That's the way that it is. So, we know as well that many of us in the morning don't find that we can start our day without coffee. I'll say personally, that's me. And there are actually at least 30 steps to get from the coffee bean on the tree to your mug. Now, most of us are not growing coffee trees in our backyard. We are not ripening those coffee beans. We are not milling those coffee beans. We don't do that. And for those of us who like chocolate, that's a 42-step process to get from the cacao to the bar or the kiss or the truffle or whatever else we eat. One of the reasons that processing is around is it does decrease the risk of foodborne illness, which is critically important, because if anybody's ever had that before, you know it's not very pleasant. We hear some of these words tossed around like, oh, there's benzoate in cereal. Actually, there's more benzoic acid that is found naturally in cranberries than cereal. Propionic acid, oh no, you shouldn't eat that. That's what the holes in Swiss cheese are made from. A lot of us love Swiss cheese. But yet, we might say, oh, I won't eat processed foods. I won't eat something in a can, but we have no qualms about eating a nutrition bar. Let me tell you, it didn't grow that way in the field. So there's a lot of things out there that are processed that doesn't make them bad. It might make them convenient for us when we run out of time. It may also be more affordable. It may also minimize the waste that we see. So if I buy frozen vegetables and they're already chopped and ready to use, and I'm not throwing away half the broccoli, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. What about carbohydrate? This whole category of foods, and some people will say, I've never met a carb I didn't like. These are pleasurable foods. Yes, it's fruits and vegetables, but it's also all kinds of grains. So it could be oatmeal or barley, or it could be rice, or it could be pasta. Potatoes are carbohydrates as well. Beans have carbohydrates in them. So why is the finger pointing at these foods all the time? When we look at the world intake, The majority of countries all around the world have carbohydrates on the plate. They are not just sitting down to a hunk of meat and that's it. They don't. So carbohydrates, because they are a plant, provide those phyto or plant nutrients. Carbohydrates provide fiber. So when people cut their carbohydrate to a minimum, it's really, really hard to get the fiber you need. Sure, you could take an over-the-counter product. That's one type of fiber. And what we find in food are lots of different types of fiber. Carbs are usually the most affordable part of our plate. They provide the versatility and the enjoyment. You usually don't find a lot of people at holiday gathering just raving about the kale. Well, maybe sometimes, but that's not usually what they're raving about. It's other things that people find so much more enjoyable. And we know that having enough carbohydrate, not only is that important to support that microbiome or the good bacteria in the gut, having not enough carbohydrate can actually suppress your immune system functioning. So sometimes people will say, I must be sugar-free to be the best that I can be. Well, if you really believe that, then you would not be able to eat any fruit, any vegetable, any dairy, any grain, because all of those have sugar in them naturally. Sometimes people will say white foods or refined carbohydrates are bad. Bad based upon what? In some of the studies that have looked at the Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and these studies have been going on for a very, very long time, where they actually have compared the health of those who ate more white carbohydrates versus whole grain. Guess what? They actually found that the health was about the same. So all this stuff out there about no white foods really doesn't have a lot of science behind it. People will say carbohydrates lead to weight gain and bloating. Well, maybe that's the amount that somebody's eating. If somebody does have a gluten sensitivity, then they might want to be careful about certain types of carbohydrates that they eat. And if somebody has celiac disease, they absolutely do not want to have anything that has gluten in it. And then, do carbohydrates lead to fatigue? No, that's folklore. There's not science to prove that that is the case. So what are the concerns that might be present if people decide they're going to take gluten out of their diet? And just to explain what that is, gluten is the protein that is found in wheat, in rye, in barley, and oats. So if somebody has a diagnosis from a gastroenterologist with a biopsy that shows that they cannot tolerate gluten because they have celiac disease, that's a different story. That's a medical reason to eliminate it. But to kind of self-diagnose and say, well, I won't eat it, what could be the problem? Well, number one, unnecessary food restriction. It's the protein in the grain, so if you don't replace that with something else, you may actually be consuming not enough protein. Certainly not enough fiber, because many of the gluten-free products are low in fiber. Your B vitamin intake might be lower, and iron as well. You may not be getting in enough carbohydrate. Gluten-free foods are double the cost of anything else that's out there on the marketplace. They're not sold everywhere. It may actually result in some psychological implications where we get a little too obsessed and stressed about what we are or are not eating. It may be extremely inconvenient, and unfortunately, it has a very deleterious effect on the microbiome. And I'm going to show you this study because I think that this is fascinating. This study was done, and although it was done in 2009, it has been replicated. And what they did is they started with a group of individuals who had a healthy gut, no celiac disease, no problem. And they gave them a gluten-free diet, fed them a gluten-free diet for 1 month. And then they checked the bacteria in their gut. And what they found is, with that green arrow pointing down, the good bacteria composition went down. Immune function went down. The presence of bad bacteria went up. To me, that's a pretty compelling argument to say that if you don't have to eliminate something, why would you? Because you might end up with some unintended consequences. All right, what about this issue of dairy or dairy-free? So we've got a lot of things out there on the dairy shelf or in the dairy case, as well as on the shelves themselves. And many of them are plant-based products. So they're not really milk, because the only way that you can have a product that's a milk means that it has to come from something that has teats. That's an animal. You don't milk an almond. You don't milk a hemp seed. You don't milk rice. You just don't. Or you don't even milk soy. The one on the bottom is a milkadamia. It's a macadamia-based product. And actually on that label, I don't have a close-up there to show you, although it says moo is moot, it also says on that label that it's made from free-range trees. What does that even mean? A tree can't be free-range. It has roots in the ground. So one of the things that we get concerned about is the protein or lack thereof. What about the mineral content of these products? For people that don't have dairy, is it because they don't tolerate the milk sugar in it, which is lactose, or because they don't tolerate the casein, which is the protein? So there are lactose-free milks on the marketplace right now. There is also a casein-free milk on the marketplace right now called A2 milk. So are they equivalent or are they an expensive swap? Well, let's take a look. Now, my very, very busy slide to show you that here are all the things that you can find right now in the dairy case. The top one is actually a dairy product. All the other ones, no, they're plants. So if we look at the fourth column in, which is protein, we can see that the top three actually have the same amount of protein, and this is for an 8-ounce glass, which is a relatively small glass. So a glass of milk, no matter what percent milk fat it has, is 8 grams of protein. A glass of soy milk, also 8 grams of protein. And the milk that are made from pea, which is split pea, Ripple is one of them, used to be a wine, now it's a plant-based milk. So pea protein is not a high quality protein. It doesn't have all the amino acids in it. Soy does, and so does dairy milk. And then the numbers start to drop off dramatically in terms of the amount of protein in them. Yeah, some people love the fact that Oatly milk is very creamy, but it doesn't have the same amount of protein, and it's not a high quality protein. And some of these, if you look at the far right column, are really pricey per glass. A glass of dairy milk is about 26 cents a glass. Some of these products go up to $1.50 a glass. So, that really can just, run that price up fast. The other thing is that a lot of people assume that all these other milks are very simple, and they're really not. So when you think about milk itself, or from a cow or a goat or a sheep for that matter, there are 3 ingredients in 1% milk. It's the milk itself, it's vitamin A and vitamin D3. That's it. Look at almond, look at soy, look at coconut milk or cashew or rice. There's a lot of things that are in that milk because they are not in the product naturally. They have to be added. And actually, in something like the almond milk for an 8-ounce glass, you're getting maybe the equivalent of 4 almonds. That's a lot of money to pay for 4 almonds. You're not getting the fiber in it because that's all been extracted to put that beverage into a glass. Okay, so when I had mentioned the sugar, and when we talk about this, are people saying I shouldn't eat any? Fructose is the sugar that is found in fruits and vegetables. Do we want to be without that? I would hope not. Lactose is the sugar that's found in milk and cheese, a little bit in yogurt, minimal in Greek yogurt. And maltose is the type of sugar that's found in all different types of grains. So why would we want to have a life without those foods? We like those foods. It gives us the variety. It gives us the color. It gives us the texture. It gives us the flavor on the plate. So what we might think about instead is added sugar. That's the one that really, I think everybody could probably do a better job with watching the added sugar. So the new label, which is on the right-hand side here, which is starting to make its way into the marketplace a little slower than it was supposed to, is under total carbohydrates. Now, what you see listed is the dietary fiber and then the total sugars. And under that, it will tell you the added sugars. So the higher that number, the more added sugar in the product. It's a choice. So there are some items out there that are lower. If somebody says, oh, but I bought something with raw sugar, that's not any different than any other sugar. Oh, I did date sugar. That's not nutritionally better. Oh, I did brown sugar. That is white sugar with caramel coloring in it. It's a choice that we can make, but it's not better. All of those things are still sugar and they're added to the foods. But what about protein? The myths that are out there about protein, the first one being if you have too much, it will harm your kidneys. That has not been shown in any study unless somebody has kidney disease or liver disease potentially. Otherwise, this is not an issue. Eating lots of protein will make you lean. Well, actually, if somebody's trying to decrease body fat, you do need to have enough protein so you hold on to the muscle. But if somebody says, I'm trying to increase my muscle a little bit, you also do that by having enough carbohydrate. It's not just protein alone. You must have animal protein to optimize health. That's a myth. You don't have to, but nor would you necessarily have to exclude it. To be your healthiest, you must be plant exclusive. You have to be a vegan. Some people want to live a vegan lifestyle, and that is absolutely fine. Does everybody have to? No, they do not. Protein powders are a necessity. They're not. Sometimes they can be helpful to have somebody meet their needs at a relatively low calorie cost, and they're quite convenient, but are they a necessity? No. As long as you eat enough protein, it doesn't matter how you eat it over the day, and that is false, because ideally, this is what you want to do with your protein intake. However much protein you're having over the day, and if you use an app, you can probably get a total number of grams of protein that you're eating. You want to divide it evenly. So in this example, where somebody's eating 120 grams of protein a day, that might sound like a lot, but depending upon the individual, that's not necessarily excessive. But it would be 30 at breakfast, 30 at lunch, 30 at dinner, and then the rest at snacks. So it's not like little eat a cow. That is not what we're looking for. Even distribution, and most people tend to have less protein at breakfast than they might at lunch or dinner. And a lot of people don't think about having protein as part of their snacks. All right, what about a plant-based diet? So when we talk about that, what does that actually mean? It isn't necessarily only plant, but it is a diet containing mostly plants, which means vegetables and grains and nuts and seeds and beans and fruit. And at the same time, less animal products. So if you're eating more plants on the plate, there's not as much room for meat, but it doesn't mean that the meat has to be off the plate unless that's something that you really feel strongly about and want to do. But we've got lots of different types of plant-based diets. Flexitarian, where people might say, well, a couple times a week I might have chicken or meat, and then the rest of the time I eat plant. Pescatarian means somebody who consumes fish, but they don't eat poultry or red meat. A lacto-ovo vegetarian are people that eat dairy and eggs, but no other animal foods. A macrobiotic diet is extremely restrictive type of plant-based or vegan plan. The fruitarian eats only fruit. I think that would get boring really, really quickly, and you definitely would be in protein deficit. And plant enhanced. I kind of like that term, plant enhanced, with that goal of putting more plants on the plate. Vegans are individuals who do not eat any animal products or supplements of any kind. And they also are not consuming any dairy. So not just the animal itself, but they don't eat anything that comes out of the animal. So why should we think about a plant-based diet? Well, in the recent dietary guidelines, plant-based diets are one of the 3 healthiest eating patterns. They lower the risk of heart disease. They lower total cholesterol. They lower blood pressure. They lower the risk for type 2 diabetes. They may have a role to play in decreasing body mass index, so helping with losing body fat, and they may lower the risk of certain types of cancers. In addition to that, people who eat more plants have lower levels of C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory agent in the body. And they may also cause vasodilation. So when those arteries are dilated, you get better blood flow all the way around. And that may also help to not only deliver oxygen to the exercising muscles, but it may also help with blood pressure. And that comes from the dietary nitrates, which actually are plants. So there we go, plants, hooray. But what are some of the things that we get concerned about when people say, I'm just going to take everything with the face off my plate or out of my glass? You still have to get your calcium needs met. You still have to get enough iron. You still need to have enough zinc, iodine, vitamin B12, which if somebody is only eating plants, you're going to have to take a supplement in order to get those needs met, because most people are not consuming enough nutritional yeast over the course of a day. Vitamin D, and even potassium. And although potassium is very concentrated in fruits and vegetables, it also is in dairy. So if you don't eat any dairy foods at all, it can get a little challenging to get those needs met each and every day. So when we think about those nutrients of concern for vegetarians, where do we find those food sources? So if somebody said, well, I'm not going to eat fish or shellfish, where do we get omega-3? We get it from leafy greens. We get it from flax or chia seeds. Hemp seed provides omega-3s, and so do walnuts. What about iron? If you have an iron skillet, they're awesome. You can do some biceps curls at the same time. And you can cook an acid-containing food like a tomato sauce, and then you end up with more iron in that tomato sauce. Leafy greens, asparagus, tofu, some of the beans and soybeans and seeds are sources of iron. Zinc we get from pumpkin and hemp seed, chickpeas, almonds, oatmeal, and cereals. Iodine comes from iodized salt. And interesting, everybody, those of you who use sea salt, most sea salts out there are not iodized. There are very few of them that are, and if they are, it has to say that on the label. But like pink Himalayan sea salt, not so much. No iodine in that one. Iodine is also found in seaweed. So if you eat sushi, iodine is in prunes. Iodine is also in raisin bran. It's added. Where do we find calcium if we don't consume dairy foods and fortified soy milk and certain greens and nuts and seeds? Vitamin D, oftentimes if levels are low, you may need to supplement. Most likely you will to get your levels to where they need to be. Some of the plant milks do have vitamin D added, but it's typically not enough to provide a significant punch of vitamin D to the diet. What about B12? We get that in nutritional yeast. Some of the plant-based milks do have it. Some mushrooms have it. Some of the soy burgers will contain vitamin B12 in some cereals. The riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, is found in grains and potassium in potatoes and bananas and citrus tomatoes and kiwis. So we can get these met, but you have to eat a lot of food in order to get these needs met every day. And then what about fat? So oftentimes people say if they're trying to change the look of their body, it's like, I just won't eat any fat. If I don't eat any fat, then I'll burn more fat. But no, that isn't true. What we are more concerned about is the type of fat that we eat every day. So we know that saturated fat are the ones that in general increase the risk of heart disease. Coconut oil, not so great for the body, and it certainly is a mainstay of paleo and keto diet, but coconut oil is actually atherogenic, increasing the risk of heart disease. Interestingly, dairy fat does not increase the risk for heart disease. A lot of people love avocado. You can see that picture of avocado toast. Personally, not a fan. I find it extremely bland. I don't even like guacamole. I just don't like it. But even though we might say avocado is a healthy fat, that's not 2 avocados a day. The serving of an avocado is 1/4 of a large one and 1/3 of a small. And then bacon also is having a comeback, right? Bacon is even an ice cream right now. And the fat that's on bacon is saturated fat. And yes, bacon is fatty, and that's what makes it delicious. And turkey bacon does not taste the same. But is it good for us? No. Does it taste good? Yes, it does. So when we think about foods and really also our budget, is it possible to eat well without spending a fortune? And indeed it is. So if we look at this, is first of all in that protein column, milk, regular milk, dairy milk, a lot less expensive than the plant-based ones that are out there. Eggs, the whole egg. Why would you throw the yolk away? That's money down your disposal. Canned fish and canned chicken are options because there's no waste. Beans work beautifully. Textured vegetable protein, which oftentimes you'll find in the cereal aisle or in some grocery stores in the baking good aisle, is basically soy that has the fat out of it. So it's in a solid form. And when you add liquid to it, it absorbs the liquid and takes on the flavor of anything you mix it with. I've done a great vegetarian chili with it. Peanut butter is a protein. Ground beef is a protein. Shredded chicken is an option. Fish fillets are an option. Buying yogurt in larger containers than the little ones that you pay more for. And cheese also can be affordable. In terms of produce, yes, we can go fresh, but right now, things that aren't in season, you're going to pay top dollar for. So why not canned or frozen? Potatoes are an option. Corn is an option. Bananas, apples, cabbage, very inexpensive. Canned tomatoes, because at this time of the year, fresh ones, yuck. vegetables and bean soup, and spaghetti sauce and salsa. And then in terms of grains, so many options. Yes, you can buy the oatmeal in the cute little packets, or you can buy the container of it and do it yourself and add your own flavoring to it and save some money. We can buy store brand cereals over the name brand one. There's lots of different options of pasta out there on the marketplace. Popcorn, where we pop it ourselves or even string it and put it on the tree. Tortillas, frozen pizza crust, pancake mix. Really lots of options out there to eat within our salary cap. And then kind of wrapping up here with this idea of supplements. My philosophy about it is this, that just because you can buy it doesn't mean you should try it. Supplementation alone does not always correct deficiencies. And certainly supplements do not erase a bad diet. They don't. Supplements are designed to be a complement to what we eat, not a replacement for the food that we eat every day. So some of the concerns about supplements is they are not one size fits all. They aren't. If somebody has a deficiency, then you might correct that with a supplement. But if your levels are normal, is there any reason to take mega doses? No, you end up with very expensive urine. Oftentimes, the foods that we eat have vitamins and minerals added to them. Think about the cereal aisle. Total cereal, it has 100% of the daily value for the vitamins and minerals that we need every day. Sometimes you can't even find ingredients listed on labels of supplements, and that's a big red flag for me. Or sometimes those supplements may actually contain contaminants or banned substances or dangerous substances. And then how do we define supplement? I think lots of things. When you have a sports bar, is that a supplement? Yep. If you have a vitamin and mineral, is that a supplement? Yep. Is a protein powder a supplement? Yep, it is. It doesn't make it right or wrong, but all those things, a sports drink, that's a supplement to our diet. So how do we find our way? And as I mentioned, and I'll say it one more time, is that eating is not one size fits all. That ideally we are proactive, not reactive. We need to eat every day, and hopefully we're eating more than once a day, so it should be an enjoyable journey, not a battle. That we really want to forecast out and think about long-term benefits versus short-term fads. That whatever it is that we're trying to do with our eating, thinking about consistency and quality and quantity. Each one of those are critically important. And if you are thinking about this idea of more plants on the plate, that's great if you are, but maybe think plant inclusive over plant exclusive. There's room for everybody. Everybody should have a seat at the table. Everybody should reach across the aisles, and everybody should make their food work for them. So this is my contact information. I'm going to answer questions for you now. And certainly those of you who do social media, I would love a follow. I'm always putting things out there every day. I am the Dr. Seuss of dietitians, so everything that I post rhymes. It just is that way. My website is activeeatingadvice.com. And if there are questions that come up after tonight, please feel free to reach out to me. So I am going to open it up for a question. Sydney, should we do that?
Yes, I've added the ability for anyone to unmute themselves or turn their camera on, or feel free to drop a question into the chat. And I'm just gonna, okay, that looks good. And we have such a great class. I learned so much. Leslie is a great speaker and very informative. Thank you. And I feel like we could probably all go around and share our favorite quotes. Mine was little, eat a cow.
Oh yeah, you know what? And because I work with, and let me tell you, for those of you who don't know me, I did work with the Steelers for 24 years. I know they're playing tonight, or they may pay tonight too. We'll see how they play. But they decided after 24 years to go in a different direction, and so I did too. And I went to the Chiefs, and it's actually working out pretty well right now. Just saying. So yeah, but I believe black and gold. I am a Pittsburgher by birth. So yeah. But the reason I brought that up is because when I talk to my athletes, if I don't talk in sound bites, they don't listen. So I say things in ways that are visual pictures for them, so that they go, yeah, I got it. Don't eat a cow. So yeah.
Thank you. What about lactose intolerance?
Yeah.
One question.
When we talk about that is for people that have lactose intolerance, their body does not break down lactose, which is the sugar that is found in milk. And Regular milk and ice cream are food that are very high in lactose. Cottage cheese also has some. So there's a couple of options, which don't necessarily mean we have to give it up altogether. Is one of the things that people can do is look for products that say that they are lactose free. And how do companies do that? They actually add the lactase enzyme, so it split the lactose so that your body doesn't have to, and then you don't have symptoms. That's one thing. The other thing is that there are lactase supplements available on the marketplace, drops that can go into milk or even pills. One of the things that I always tell my patients who have lactose intolerance is you need to take the pills or use the drop before you eat, not afterwards. It has to be before so that that enzyme is already in the body to split it down. The other thing is, and the good news is that even for people who have been lactose intolerant or find that they develop that over a period of time, like for instance, if you have a stomach flu, you may find yourself lactose intolerant for a period of time afterwards until your body heals, is that if you start with a very small amount, or if you actually have a little bit of that food with other foods, that may actually help to prevent some of the symptoms. And the symptoms with lactose intolerance are typically in the lower gut. So it's bloating, sometimes it's diarrhea. It's something that people tend to notice in a relatively short period of time. So if you don't normally eat dairy and then you challenge yourself and say, let me have a milkshake the size of my head, just be warned now that you're probably going to feel uncomfortable because that's a little bit too much lactose for your body to digest.
Do you suggest counting calories?
I don't. And the reason that I don't is because a calorie is just a snapshot. It really does, because, if that was the case, I'm eating 1,200 calories of Christmas cookies. Awesome. But are you necessarily meeting your nutritional needs for the day? Not at all. And what we eat, the composition of what we eat is so much more important than just focusing in on that number. So, I would rather, if when people think about the plate, if somebody says, my goal is I'm trying to decrease body fat, that half of that plate would be fruit and vegetable, that about 1/3 of that plate would be whatever protein you're eating, and about 1/4 of that plate would be some kind of other grain or like a vegetable, like a potato or corn. So it's not off the plate, but it's a little bit less. So it's not a trough of pasta on the plate. It might be more sauce and meat with vegetables and a little bit less pasta.
Lots of kind comments. Thank you. That was very informative. Thank you for this presentation. I learned so much and you made it easy to follow and fun to hear. Question, what do you think about a child being raised a vegetarian from birth and no meat allowed, and the child is now 6 years old?
Yeah, there are, because plant-based and vegetarian and vegan is so incredibly popular right now. Can children grow well on a plant-based diet? They can, although I will tell you that the Academy of Pediatrics has a little bit of mix on that of what they consider to be safe or not. I am really not a big fan of kind of saying, well, I won't do soy and I'm keeping it really low fat and we're going to go gluten-free. When you add all those restrictions on top, then you end up really depriving that growing child of the nutrients that he or she so desperately needs. So if somebody is going to be plant-based, then it means that we're introducing in enough beans, enough nuts, enough soy seeds, using some soy foods, unless somebody has a soy allergy. There's no reason to eliminate that. Using plant-based milk, but a soy milk would really be the best one because at least that has a nutritional profile that is comparable to dairy. And then we also want to make sure that fat needs are met, because oftentimes animal foods are sources of fat. So, some 6-year-olds might love avocado, some maybe not so much. So it is really important that eating plan be as diverse as possible. And I do think that for parents that are considering having their children raised on a plant-based diet, working with a registered dietitian is a really, really good idea, because you don't get a do-over with your kids' health. We really want to set the stage early on the right way.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about intermittent fasting for type 2 diabetes or type 2 diabetics?
Yeah, so the research on intermittent fasting with type 2 diabetes has actually been somewhat promising, and especially for people who, as I mentioned earlier, tend to find that their eating is more in the evening. They find that they're not satisfied after dinner and they keep eating that by putting an upper limit on when they're going to stop or when their jaw shuts is that they may have lower fasting blood glucose levels in the morning. So that indeed can be helpful. The one thing too is that if somebody is going to do intermittent fasting, or whether they're diabetic or not, is that you really have to think about your waking hours of the day and also think about when do you need to be most mentally productive. Oh, well, I'm not going to eat anything after 2, but I regularly have meeting from 3 to 5. That's probably not a great idea because your brain is just going to be fried. Or if somebody says, well, I work out in the evening, but I'll stop eating at 4, then you might not have the energy available to support what you're doing physically. So you have to, if you're going to do intermittent fasting, you really need to think about your day, when you're going to need the energy, when you exercise, and kind of work your eating around it. So it's not, again, not one size fits all.
Is fish coated with egg and panko, fried in olive oil, okay twice a week?
It is. First of all, any fish is very lean. I mean, fish is primarily protein. There is some fat in cold water fish like salmon or a sea bass or something like that, but the amount of fat is pretty low. I mean, it's not like eating a piece of meat where you can trim the fat off. What are you going to trim from fish? I mean, nothing to trim off. So we have a great source of protein. The egg with it that actually helps to hold the panko, so that brings a little crunch. I love panko. I use actually a little panko crumb on potatoes. They're awesome with a little tuxedo sesame seeds. It's like, yum. And then you're also putting it in a good fat. So, hey, great. The only thing I would say would make it better, let's have some vegetables on the side. And there we go.
Another question, several still coming in. Do you have a sample menu for a day to get all the nutrients you feel are needed? And for everyone, there's going to be a follow-up email, and I will send you Leslie's website address on there so you can look at her website for information she has. But
yeah, I really think that one of the best places to look for some inspiration and ideas is myplate.gov. That's the website, and MyPlate is certainly the logo right now that is used for the dietary guideline, but you can actually go on to that website and you can put in your parameters as your gender and your age and your activity level and all the and what your goals are, and then it kind of decides things for you and will then kind of develop a meal plan for you based upon what it is that you selected.
And this question came in as you were talking about soy a few moments ago. Breast cancer runs in my family, mixed messages from doctors about whether to consume soy products. What are your thoughts?
There have been at this point at least 1,000 studies that have been done, carried out around the world. Some in individuals that are at high risk for breast cancer, some who are breast cancer survivors. The good news is that in none of those studies did they see that consuming soy foods caused an increase in terms of tumor initiation, progression, or anything else. So absolutely fine to use it. The only concerns about soy would be more if somebody said, I'm going to take a soy isoflavone in a pill form. When we eat soy in a food form, the isoflavones, which are the estrogens in the soy, and that's plant estrogen, is not the same as estrogen that we produce in our body, but it's always the same amount. It never changes. When we take a supplement, it's a crapshoot. We don't always know, and that may be problematic, but eating soy-containing foods, absolutely fine.
This is a question I had myself. How do you feel about these tests that find out if you have food sensitivities, the take-home test or order them? Is there any way to actually test for food sensitivities, and are these trustworthy?
Yeah, they are not trustworthy. They actually, it's a lot of quackery, and I'm being very kind in the way that I say that right now. I years and years ago, I did a story for. It wasn't for, it might have been for 2020. And the reporter who interviewed me did this test 3 times, sent to the same lab, and got 3 entirely different results. That shouldn't be the case if it was accurate. What it's testing for is IgE, which is a very non-sensitive measure of what happens. If we're stressed, those levels go up. So it's not really giving you any idea of whether or not you're sensitive to a food. When I worked with the Toronto Blue Jays, one of our star hitters decided he was going to do that. He was from the Dominican Republic and grew up at the age of 38, probably having eaten rice and beans every day of his life once he was able to chew. And this test indicated that he couldn't do it, that he was sensitive to it. It lasted all of 24 hours. He came back in and said, nah, it's ridiculous. I'm going to eat it. How do we really know if somebody has a food allergy? You go to an allergist and they actually do the RAS test, where they actually put little samples of the suspected allergen in your arm and see whether or not you have a reaction. That is the only accurate testing right now. People have spent countless and countless dollars, thousands of dollars on these tests that are taking foods out of their diet unnecessarily. And I will tell you, the other side of that is oftentimes it comes with supplements. Oh, we define blah, 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 blah. So you need blah, 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 blah. No, you don't, because that's not helping to replace if you've taken all these foods out of your diet. Don't even get me started on this.
I see you feel very passionate about it.
TikTok, this is TikTok to me when I hear these types of things. Absolutely TikTok.
And we have one more question. What do you look for when choosing a good probiotic?
You want to look for is first of all, you want to look for what do you want it for? So for instance, are you looking for a probiotic because you have irritable bowel syndrome? Are you looking for a probiotic to support a healthy immune system? Are you looking for a probiotic to address IBS-C, which is IBS with constipation, or versus IBS diarrhea? So you want to make sure that you're buying the probiotic based upon the symptoms. Second, you want a low maintenance probiotic. There's absolutely no reason to buy something that has to be refrigerated or coddled or any other thing. It's ridiculous. You can buy a shelf stable one. It is fine. And third, you want to make sure that when you are looking at the amount of the species or the strains that are there, it is like 10 to the 6th power, so 10 parts per billion. Otherwise, there's not enough in there to do your body any good whatsoever.
Well, thank you so much for all this information. Lots of kind comments from everyone in the audience, and we are super appreciative for having you here with us this evening.
Oh, my pleasure. I've enjoyed it. Everybody, please have joyous, happy, healthy, flavorful holidays.